This week, there is a minor breakout from PAPI in M2TAC. Helms Deep is given a poke. Siberian Squad announced their departure from Legacy Coalition, and an Imperium Keepstar is put into its armor timer. Hello, I'm Frost, and this is your weekly EVE Online War Update. Welcome back. So as we know, PAPI have kind of been re-evaluating their whole approach to this war. And this week in particular, there was a change in the way they'd handle fleets. So before, fleets were very much on a scheduled basis. So they would announce in Alliance Discords and Coalition Discords, like 24 hours in advance, we need you here tomorrow for this time or at this particular time. And in the last week, there's been a change towards flash forming. So flash forming is no announcement except we need you right now, get in a ship, undock, get in fleet, or preferably get in fleet, undock. And the reason I assume behind this is that they want to see if this kind of change of approach allows them to get better numbers than the Imperium can on a flash form basis. Now, whether this actually works out to their advantage, we'll have to see. So we will know probably in about a week or so once they've given us a good look. Obviously, if they're able to outperform the Imperium, they'll stick with the flash forms. If they don't, or it's kind of still the same as before in terms of number, the sort of variation between the two sides, then I would imagine they will go back to scheduled fleets. So we'll have to see how that kind of pans out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through the week as we usually do. So first up is the Constellation in WTAC 4. This is the light, sort of violet, light pink one down in the bottom right hand corner. Now this whole area, if you remember, was kind of a focus of attention the previous week, but they seem to have just let it go now. So PAPI seem to have ignored this, and DC, that's Dracaris, which is the Chinese alliance that's within the Imperium, has kind of taken over control of this area, and I assume that they are the ones reinforcing the WTAC-K system right here, which currently belongs to NC. So it looks like PAPI have decided to just not bother with that and focus on other things. So just checking my notes. So first up, Monday the 18th, so that was the date the last video came out. In the evening, some Ihubs were reinforced all around here in this constellation down the bottom here. This is the one obviously with M2TAC in it as well, which is of note, and we'll talk about in a little while. As you can see, this is bang up to date. This is actually a live dot land that we're seeing right now. And the thing with this is that you can see that these are all Condi still. So even though they were reinforced, from what I recall, they weren't actually contested. So this seems to be kind of a recurring theme right now with PAPI, that they are kind of reinforcing timers, but not actually then committing to the sod warfare to actually flip the Ihub. And this may be tied into their flash forms, you know, and trying to see whether they can just keep forming the Imperium all the time and kind of drain them a little bit that way. So that was kind of Monday the 18th, and like I said, not much happened in terms of the way of fights. Now, on Tuesday the 19th, if you remember last week, I said that some Asbels were starting to appear in M2TAC, which is obviously where we have all these PAPI super capital fleet kind of bubbled and hellcat. Now, one of those first Asbels to be anchored was actually died uncontested. But as we'll find out later through the week, rather than trying to fight over every single timer, they decided to spam instead and have been dropping lots and lots of structures. So then we move into kind of Wednesday morning, so it had been Tuesday night US time zone, and this kind of came out of nowhere. It was one of these fights that just escalated again. And I have a battle report right here. And as you can see, it took place kind of in the very early, sort of late US time zone, so 5 a.m. UTC on Wednesday the 20th, which had been late US for the US, and then for the Australian time zone, it would have been, I'm losing track now, it would have been way into Wednesday evening. So, but what was interesting here was that it did turn into a dread fight, and the dread numbers, essentially Goonswarm were overwhelmed in terms of the dreads. So PAPI brought 173 dreads, Imperium brought 81. So clearly in this time zone, the Imperium were unable to match the PAPI side in terms of dread drops. And as a consequence of that, PAPI only lost 33 dreads, and the Imperium lost almost all of them at 72 dreads, which accounts for this kind of rather large figure here of 298 billion lost to 128 billion lost to PAPI. There was also an Eagle fleet, I believe. If I just scroll down, you'll see there's a big bunch of red here. An Eagle fleet also died, pretty much all of it in this battle. Now, I don't know what caused it. It was an M2 TAC, and it may have just simply have escalated. If someone had news on this, I don't really have any contacts on the AU time zone. So if you know kind of more what's going on, then please let me know in the comments or drop into my Discord and let me know there. Discord is link is in my description. So that was kind of Wednesday. Then on Thursday was pretty quiet. So I just went and had a look around, and I had a look at particularly in M2 TAC. And the one thing I noticed is that a lot more structures were being dropped by PAPI. So at that time, there were 2 Asbels already anchored. There were 2 more Asbels and 2 Fortizars anchoring, so on anchoring timers. And what we saw then is that the Imperium chose to not actually fight these timers, these anchorings, and they were left to anchor. And actually by the end of the week, we were actually up to 3 Fortizars and 4 Asbels at the time of shooting this video. So that was on Monday the 25th. So yeah, that was a pretty quiet night. Then we went on, then we went on to Thursday, we went on to 2000 on Thursday 21st. So there was a big fight in FMTech. So FMTech is right here, okay, and once again, it's these 2 constellations. So let me go to my constellation map, here we go. So this grey one and this green one, so right here, seem to be getting a lot of activity in there, even though there isn't kind of really any strategic sense in kind of fighting over these Ihubs all the time, except maybe DTAC-W, which has a Keepstar in it, and I believe, I can't remember 5TAC-C, I think 5TAC-C and STAC-6 are the other ones with Keepstars in them. But the others, doesn't seem to be much sense, but you know, good fights were had on both sides here. So once again, I have a battle report, and it just turned into a massive brawl, and it went on for, you know, a good 3 hours, I think. But what was interesting, and you can see from the number of monitors that are here, a lot of FCs were involved on both sides. You can see there's like another whole bunch of monitors on this side. So on the right is obviously PAPI, on the left is the Imperium. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 monitors on both sides. Now, not necessarily all of these were leading fleets. Some of them may have been backup FCs. But what was interesting is it just turned into a pure kind of hack fight. Hacks have kind of become the de facto standard now. So hacks meaning heavy assault cruisers. So that's Eagles, Cerberuses, and Munings. And what was actually really, really sad is that even the Initiative now are flying Eagles. You know, I like the Initiative normally bring like really crazy doctrines and something different from everybody else, and even they have kind of fallen into the fold of the hack doctrines. And I think for the remainder of the war, unless CCP change something, we are going to see nothing but Serbs, Eagles, and Muniz, with the odd Harpy fleet thrown in, and obviously Jackdaws to provide support. Those are kind of the doctrines that we're really, really seeing at the moment on the subcap side. So end result of this is there was 62 billion lost to PAPI and 45 billion lost to Goonswarm. But I think it was just, I think everybody kind of enjoyed the fight. Tie-dye wasn't too bad, and so it allowed for lots of positioning and lots of range, people really sorting out their ranges and trying to just clip at each other's wings almost in order to be able to try and take out their enemy, which is why it kind of took so long. No one went in kind of like face to face and like really tight within range. Everyone was just kind of sniping at each other and kiting around each other. So a very, very tactical battle. And the losses could have been much worse on either side. But like I said, neither side kind of really fully committed to this fight. But it was interesting all the same to see. And it was nice to actually have this fight in kind of zero or very low tie-dye. So that was Thursday the 21st. Then on Friday the 22nd, once again, there was a big form map and there was a big flash form from the PAPI side. And most of their fleets ended up in 5TAC-C. But that actually wasn't where the action was happening. Most of the fleets did absolutely nothing. But if I go over to a map here, this is the dot land of the 22nd, so that was the Friday evening, and I think I took this at 2300. So what you'll see is obviously these Ihubs were reinforced, and these Ihubs were reinforced the night before as a consequence of this fight in FMTech. Whilst that was happening, the Ihubs were being reinforced by PAPI. But more notably, you can see up here in LUA5 QC, let me see if I can boost this up a little bit, there we go. So LUA5, QC, TTAC-M and QTAC-J were all reinforced whilst the PAPI fleets were just sitting in 5TAC-C. And they're all waiting for these to be contested. So if you remember last week, I actually said that one of the things that concerned me was that PAPI were not doing anything to change the war circumstances for the Imperium side. That they were kind of getting a little bit comfortable, and in a war, that's the last thing you want, is for your enemy to feel comfortable. And so I said, you know, this was something that I thought might happen, and it did. But obviously, all of these systems are Sinojam. So the way they got in here was with Black Ops, and I wasn't actually in these systems. I couldn't actually see what was going on, but I presume that they used rapiers, which can covert ops jump into Sinojam systems, and were able to then reinforce these. And there was very little resistance, as I understand. There was just a few burst sectors from one FC that came in, but they were unable to hold them back. And eventually, these 4 timers were put into reinforce, these 4 Ihubs. And then these were going to come out on Sunday evening, so that's Sunday the 24th. So it wasn't much of wasn't much fun for everybody else. Everyone else just kind of sat around on Titans waiting to jump in. Nothing happened except the reinforce, which was uncontested, and that kind of ended the Friday night. So then we come on to Saturday. So this was still Friday night for the US time zone, but it was actually Saturday morning. This was a 0100 UTC. So later this evening, after this happened, there was an attempted breakout from the PAPI side in M2TAC. So they jumped in a whole bunch of subcaps, and they went for the bubbles that were away from the Fortizar. So in total, there were kind of 3 sets of bubbles. There's the bubbles below the Keepstar, and they hold all of the super capital fleet that was logged out, that failed to log out our downtime on the armor timer. Then there are the bubbles above the Keepstar, which have all the Titans that jumped in on the fated day when all the servers had their meltdown and all strange things happened and the attack was aborted. But some Titans were still jumped in and logged out, and some supers and lots of capitals as well were logged out in these top bubbles. And then finally, there were some side bubbles, and I can't even remember now why. But there's some supers and Titans ended up in some of these bubbles, as well as some capitals. I can't remember if there was a structure there that they warped to or what, but there was still some side bubbles. So the first thing that happened is PAPI came in and were able to clear out these side bubbles and to jump out. I think a couple of Titans and maybe a super jumped out from those side bubbles. But then what was really interesting was they went and YOLO'd in and went, we're going to try and take out these top bubbles. And so they warped in the subcap fleets, which were Munins and Eagles and all the usual hacks which I mentioned earlier. And I have some video footage here. I was about to go to bed when this happened. It's outside of my time zone. I was able to get a sector in here and get a little bit of footage, because this is something I really want to point out. There was actually a tactical mistake from the Imperium, which I was really surprised to see. So you have all of these, in blue is PAPI and in red is the Imperium. So on the top there, you could see that we've got the Imperium subcap fleet. And then you see all of these fighters launching from the Imperium. So this is how the Imperium have been kind of covering these bubbles. They've been using loads and loads of fighters from capitals, from carriers. And you can see the big swarm coming up there. And obviously they want to try and take out these subcap fleets from PAPI. But then, if you see to the right, you start to see loads of Horde carriers jumping in. Now, there's one thing to say for the Hordelings. They love their carriers, okay? They have loads of them. And loads of these guys dropped in. Now, what happened at this point is that what the Imperium should have done immediately was to pull back their fighters. Their fighters would have been things like Templars, which are combat fighters against subcaps. And Now, what happened is as soon as Horde jumped in, they launched SS fighters. Now, these are space superiority fighters, which are specifically aimed to kill other fighters. Now, generally, in a carrier engagement, it is always space superiority first. You need to take out the enemy's fighters before you can use your fighters to attack subcaps. But instead, the Imperium didn't pull them back, and they left them out there. Now, maybe they thought that they could either take out the hack fleets before the space superiority fighters got to them, or maybe they thought, they had more fighters available in the Keepstar, so if they lost all their fighters, they could just dock up, restock, and then come out again. But it did seem really strange. But as a consequence of this, the Horde carriers, or the legacy carriers in general, were able to kind of take out all of these fighters, and they lost lots of fighters, and this enabled the PAPI sides to clear these bubbles at the top. And as a consequence of that, let me see, they managed to get 7 Titans and 11 Supers out over the course of about 3 or 4 hours. Although they did lose 2 Supers, I think 2 Hordes Supers, 2 Nexes died. I think they're kind of trying to push a little bit too much, tried to get 2 more out, got a little bit greedy, and those 2 got caught at the end, and that was about 5 AM UTC. So obviously that still leaves a lot of Titans and Supers down in that bottom bubble, and as the last count, I believe, is around over 300 Titans, 320 Titans, 100 plus Supers and 100 plus other capitals, a mix of faxes and carriers, etc. So these bottom bubbles are still an issue, and then there's obviously going to be more kind of breakout plans, to try and get these out, as that is very, very important for PAPI morale. So then we kind of come on to Saturday the 23rd, later in the day. So this was in early hours of Saturday morning, UTC. And then at 14:30, the PAPI side formed again, and they jumped into M2 TAC, but they didn't actually engage, and they ended up just dropping another structure, which I believe was another Fortizar. But that was it. And I think the 2 main reasons for that was, well, the main reason for that, should I say, is that a lot of the EU FCs kind of got involved with this fight and were up till 5 o'clock in the morning of their time, maybe 6 in the morning. So they had about 3 or 4 hours sleep, got up, and then tried to do another fleet. And I think they were just simply too exhausted. And I think this actually showed, because then the Saturday night UTC, there was actually no activity, which is really, really unusual for EVE, for there to not be like the Saturday night fight. And I think it was literally that all the SCs were just too exhausted. So instead, the only thing that we had on Saturday was that Siberian Squad announced that they are leaving Legacy Coalition. So the Siberian Squad are a Russian alliance, and they are part of Legacy. And they were actually living in Tenerife. So if I bring up Tenerife right here, let me see if I can go back to my universe. There we go. I'm going to go to Tenerife. So they, is that Tenerife? Yeah. Oh, wow. It's already changed. Okay. So people have been jumping right in there. Let me just check my TCUs. No, there we go. Siberian Squad. So the light brown or cream color is Siberian Squad. So just so you know, Tenerife is kind of 2 regions in one. So the purple that you see over on the right there is Army of Mangoes, and then obviously on the left we've got Siberian Squad and a Requiem Eternal over on the left there. The way Tenerife is kind of, the way that it works is that you can only get a super capital umbrella over half the region, so it kind of splits into 2. So all of this is going to end up being empty. Now Siberian Squad decided to leave, as apparently that they weren't getting content in their time zone. And so they're going to do other stuff up north. Now, they could have potentially joined Fire. So Fire Coalition used to live in Tenerife, particularly Razor and XIX. They moved up into Detroit after taking that space from Fraternity, and they are still there. So you can see there's Razor there, and we've got some tests as well. And then XIX is on the north of Detroit and in Smother as well. So they could have potentially moved in with Fire, but clearly they didn't decide to do that. They decided to move away and have gone up north somewhere. How this affects the war isn't that much of a difference, because Siberian Squad were pretty much one of the only Russian alliances, I believe, in Legacy Coalition. And as they're not going to be part of Fire, they weren't involved in their fleets where they had the mass numbers. So therefore, I don't think they could form enough numbers on their own to be able to feel like they were making a difference, and so decided to leave Legacy and do other things. So that was Saturday. Then we come on to early hours of Sunday morning, and I'm going to go back to Delve again. And what happened, like I said, there wasn't any kind of EU time zone fight, but there was some activity on the US time zone side. And what they actually did was reinforce the Keepstar in one-tack SMEB. So one-tack SMEB, as you can see, the Ihub is still held by Northern Coalition. Let me just confirm that. There we go. And there is still a Sino-jammer in this system. And so they have reinforced the shield timer. And what this means is that the armor timer is going to be coming out tonight. That's Monday the 25th at 2300 UTC. And I would imagine that it's going to be in the best interest of PAPI to take this on this armor timer. Obviously, they've got the benefits of the Sino-jammer. And then they potentially got the chance of seeing whether they can actually still take down a Keepstar. Now, obviously, with the Sino-jammer, it means that they can stop the Imperium from jumping in the same way they did with M2TAC, jumping in, their massive super capitals. Obviously, they can still jump in large numbers of subcaps, so it's going to be interesting to see if they do this armor timer, where this leads on the final timer. Will the Imperium try and tune tank even with just subcaps, just log in 6,000 people, leave them logged in all day so that the PAPI side can't log in their super capital fleet, or whether they will try and do something else. So that's going to be something to watch out for, and that's going to happen obviously next week with the armor timer coming out tonight. Then the other thing that was surprising later on was Sunday evening. If you remember, I said that Helms Deep, these four systems on the top here, LUA5, QC, TTAC-M and QTAC-J, were all reinforced, but they didn't contest them. They didn't actually go into the sub warfare. Now, the only thing that I can presume with that was that obviously they used blops to be able to get in and actually reinforce the initial timers, but to actually do the sub warfare, they're going to need to bring in typical subcat fleet, so all your stuff that you need for sub warfare. And also potentially be able to drop dreads or faxes. Now, because of all these Sino-jammers, unless they're able to clear at least one, they couldn't get any subcaps in. And if they want to be able to hold some of these nodes properly, they're going to need, those dreads to come in and kill the Imperium faxes, or even bring in faxes their own. And they may have decided it was just unable to do it. They were unable to find the kind of fleet they needed to take out Sino-jammer to implement this. So it was very much a poke at Helms Deep, and I would imagine they're going to now look at how they're going to be able to actually get to the point where they can actually fight sub warfare in Helms Deep. Then finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is some Titan deaths, and supercarrier deaths. Now, as you know, downtime fights are still a thing. That in M2TAC, we still have supers and Titans warping in literally seconds before downtime so they can bring up their cap and try and make a bookmark as to their location so that they can get an idea of where their ship is, so that when bubbles are cleared, they know whether they can log in and jump out or not. And the Imperium have been getting very, very good at killing these. Now, supercarrier-wise, there was an army of Mango's Aeon, which is right here, which I saw actually logged in that time. It logged in way too early and ended up getting blacked. And then we also had, and that was it on the supercarriers. These two supercarriers, the ones I mentioned earlier, which came in a little bit too late on the extract and died. But there was a Titan loss. The Titan loss was for Lithium Dozer Pandemic Horde. And unfortunately, what had let him down, I think, was that he probably forgot that he had his hyperspatials on his rigs. And so I assume someone must have told him, log in 25 seconds beforehand, you'll be fine. And didn't take into account the fact that he's had hyperspatials, landed on grid too early. On top of that, it looks like the Imperium, and I think this is the initiative, have a new doctrine. So it's got to be the initiative, right? And I think I'm going to call it the Black Titan. So as you can see from this clip, what we have is a Doomsday weapon here, and we have 6 overheated SIBOs on a Titan to clearly try and lock and get a Doomsday off on a Titan landing on grid in the last second before downtime. And as you can see here, a couple of Doomsdays did actually hit. This one from Laksh Danan landed spot on and got managed to do 17% damage. So clearly this logging in at downtime looks like the Imperium are finding a counter to that. So that's going to prove interesting. So there we go. So we've got all these structures in M2 TAC now. There's, like I said, there's 3 4-stars, 4 Asbels. So I expect to see more breakouts during the week. And obviously we got the Keepstar and 1-TAC SMEB to take a look at as well. So I hope you enjoyed all that. As usual, do all the usual stuff. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, make sure it's definitely clicked. Be sure to make comments as well. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts about this. And please join my Discord as well. And also finally, do link my videos in your Alliance Discord into your core piece, as it really helps me help the channel grow. So there you go. Right, that's it from me. Yeah, all right. See you on the next one. Bye.